The shot rang out across the canyon, echoing off red rock walls before fading into the vast emptiness of the Arizona desert. And Samuel Morgan pulled the trigger one more time just to hear something other than his own breathing and the steady rhythm of his horse's hooves against the dusty trail. It was 1883, and he had been alone so long that sometimes he forgot what his own voice sounded like when it wasn't directed at the bay gelding beneath him. "That's enough ammunition wasted for today, Copper," Samuel said, holstering his revolver and patting the horse's neck. "We have got 3 more miles before we reach Coolidge, and I would rather not arrive looking like some trigger-happy fool." Copper snorted, shaking his mane, and Samuel took that as agreement. The horse was 8 years old, a good listener, and never interrupted when Samuel needed to think out loud. For the past 4 years, since Samuel left his family's ranch in Texas after his father's death and his brother's betrayal over the inheritance, Copper had been his only companion. His only friend, really. People in the various towns Samuel drifted through knew him as the quiet drifter who took odd jobs, fixed fences, broke horses, and moved on before anyone could get too close. "I know what you are thinking," Samuel continued, guiding Copper down the rocky path toward the valley where Coolidge sat like a collection of sun-bleached bones against the rust-colored earth. "You are thinking that I talk to you more than any man should talk to a horse. But you have never lied to me, never stolen from me, never looked at me like I was worth less than dirt, so I figure that makes you better company than most people I have met." The truth was that Samuel had nearly forgotten how to have proper conversations with humans. At 26 years old, he found himself stumbling over words when a shopkeeper asked him a simple question, or falling silent when other ranch hands tried to include him in their evening banter. It was easier to stay quiet, to let people think he was unfriendly or strange. It hurt less than trying and failing to connect. Coolidge appeared on the horizon as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded Samuel of the bruises he had earned in his youth, learning to ride and rope and fight. The town was small, maybe 200 people if you counted generously, with a main street that boasted a general store, a saloon, a church, a blacksmith, and a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson who Samuel had worked for last summer, repairing her roof and her barn. Mrs. Patterson said she might have more work come autumn, Samuel told Copper as they rode down the main street, drawing a few curious glances from townspeople who recognized him. "Figured we would see if she was serious about that offer. Could use a few weeks of steady work before winter sets in." He dismounted outside the boarding house, a 2-story structure that had seen better days but stood solid thanks to Samuel's previous efforts. Mrs. Patterson emerged before he could knock, wiping her hands on her apron and squinting at him in the fading light. "Samuel Morgan, as I live and breathe," she said, her weathered face creasing into a smile. "I hoped you would remember my offer. I've got work aplenty if you are still interested." "Yes, madam," Samuel said, the words feeling rusty in his mouth. He cleared his throat. "I mean, I am interested in the work, if you still need help. I do indeed. But first, let me tell you about the situation." Mrs. Patterson gestured for him to follow her inside, and Samuel hesitated, glancing back at Copper. "Your horse will be fine for a moment," she assured him. "This is important." Inside the boarding house, the smell of bread and coffee filled the air, making Samuel's stomach growl. He realized he had not eaten since morning, too focused on making good time to stop for a proper meal. Mrs. Patterson poured him a cup of coffee without asking, a kindness he appreciated. "I have taken in a new boarder," she said, settling into a chair across from him at the kitchen table. "A young woman arrived 3 days ago on the stage from Tucson. She is in a difficult situation, Samuel, and I think you might be able to help her." Samuel's hands tightened around the coffee cup. He was good with horses, with wood and nails and leather. He was not good with people, especially not young women who probably expected polite conversation and social graces he had long since abandoned. "I am not sure I am the right person," he started, but Mrs. Patterson held up a hand. "Just hear me out. Her name is Katherine Reynolds, and she came here to meet a man she had been corresponding with for 6 months, a man who promised her marriage and a home. She left everything behind in Philadelphia, traveled all this way, and when she arrived, she discovered the man had lied about nearly everything. He was already married, Samuel. He had been writing to her and 2 other women, spinning tales and making promises he never intended to keep." Samuel felt a familiar anger rise in his chest, the kind that came from knowing too well how cruel people could be. "That is despicable." "It is. And now Katherine is stranded here with very little money, no family, and nowhere to go. She has been helping me around the boarding house in exchange for her room, but she cannot stay indefinitely without income of her own. I thought perhaps you could help her find work, introduce her to some of the ranchers who might need help with bookkeeping or cooking or whatever skills she has. You know people around here, even if you do not talk to them much." The irony was not lost on Samuel. Mrs. Patterson was asking the loneliest man in Arizona to help a stranded woman connect with a community. But he found himself nodding anyway, because the alternative was leaving someone in need, and his mother had raised him better than that. "I will meet her," he said, "but I cannot promise much. I am not exactly known for my social skills." "You are honest and kind, Samuel. That is more than enough." Mrs. Patterson led him upstairs, knocking gently on the second door on the left. "Katherine, dear, there is someone I would like you to meet." The door opened, and Samuel found himself looking into the most striking green eyes he had ever seen. Katherine Reynolds was probably 23 or 24, with dark blonde hair pinned up in a style that was coming loose after what must have been a long day of work. She wore a simple blue dress, faded but clean, and there was a wariness in her expression that Samuel recognized because he saw it in his own reflection every time he passed a mirror. "This is Samuel Morgan," Mrs. Patterson said. "He is the man I told you about, the one who might be able to help you find work in the area." Katherine studied him for a long moment, and Samuel felt his tongue stick to the roof of his mouth. He wanted to say something reassuring, something that would ease the obvious tension in her shoulders, but his mind went blank the way it always did when faced with actual human interaction. "You are the one who only talks to his horse," Katherine said finally, and there was no judgment in her voice, only curiosity. Samuel felt his face heat. "Copper is a good listener. I imagine he is." A ghost of a smile crossed Katherine's face. "Thank you for agreeing to help me, Mr. Morgan. I know I am a stranger, and I have no claim on anyone's kindness here." "You need help," Samuel said simply. "That is claim enough." The smile reached her eyes this time, transforming her face from pretty to genuinely beautiful. Samuel looked away quickly, focusing on a spot just over her left shoulder. "I will ask around tomorrow, see who might need help. Can you cook?" "Yes. I can also keep books, mend clothes, teach children, and manage a household. I grew up in a boarding house in Philadelphia, so I learned a little of everything." "That should give us options," Samuel said. He risked another glance at her face and found her watching him with an expression he could not quite read. "I should go see to my horse." "I will come by tomorrow morning if that suits you." "It does. Thank you, Mr. Morgan." "Samuel," he said, surprising himself. "Just Samuel is fine." He retreated downstairs, his heart beating faster than it had any right to. Mrs. Patterson was waiting in the kitchen, looking far too pleased with herself. "I will be back tomorrow," Samuel told her, heading for the door before she could comment on whatever she thought she had seen. Need to get Copper settled at the livery. Outside, the evening air cooled his burning face. Copper waited patiently where Samuel had left him, and Samuel pressed his forehead against the horse's neck for a moment, gathering himself. "I made a fool of myself in there," he muttered. "Could barely string 2 words together. She probably thinks I am simple." Copper stamped a hoof, and Samuel laughed despite himself. "You are right. I am overthinking it. I just need to help her find work, that is all. I can manage that without too much conversation." But as he led Copper toward the livery, Samuel could not stop thinking about those green eyes and that almost smile, and the way Katherine had not looked at him like he was strange or broken. She had looked at him like he was just another person trying their best in a difficult world. The next morning, Samuel woke before dawn in the small room he rented above the livery when he was in Coolidge. He had not slept well, his mind churning with half-formed plans for how to help Katherine without making a fool of himself. By the time the sun rose, he had a list of 3 ranchers who might need help, and a plan to visit them all before noon. He stopped by the boarding house to find Katherine already awake, helping Mrs. Patterson prepare breakfast for the other boarders. She wore a different dress today, green calico that matched her eyes, and her hair was neatly pinned. When she saw Samuel hovering in the doorway, she wiped her hands on her apron and joined him on the porch. "Good morning," she said. "Would you like some breakfast before we start?" "I ate already," Samuel lied, too nervous to stomach food. "I thought we could ride out to the Morrison Ranch first. They have a big operation, lots of hands to feed. They might need help in the kitchen or the house." "I do not have a horse," Katherine said apologetically. "I had to sell almost everything to afford the stage fare here." Samuel had not thought of that. He looked back at Copper, tied to the porch rail, and made a decision that would have seemed impossible a day ago. "You can ride with me, if you do not mind." A hint of pink colored Katherine's cheeks. "I do not mind if you are certain." He was not certain of anything except that having her sit behind him on Copper was going to make it very difficult to concentrate on anything else. But he nodded and held out his hand to help her mount. Her hand was small and warm in his, calloused from work just like his own. She settled behind him carefully, her arms coming around his waist to hold on, and Samuel forgot how to breathe for several seconds. "Ready?" he managed to ask. "Ready," she confirmed, her voice very close to his ear. The ride to the Morrison Ranch took 30 minutes, and Samuel was acutely aware of every movement Katherine made, every shift of her weight, every breath. He tried to think of something to say, but his mind was blank except for the strange awareness of her presence. "How long have you had Copper?" Katherine asked, breaking the silence. 8 years. Got him when he was barely broken, half wild and mean. Took me 6 months to earn his trust." Samuel relaxed slightly, grateful for a topic he could actually discuss. "He is getting old now, but he is still the best horse I have ever known." "You are good with him. I can tell he trusts you completely." "Horses are easier than people," Samuel said without thinking. "They do not lie or pretend to be something they are not." He felt Katherine's grip tighten slightly around his waist. "No, they do not." "I wish I had learned that lesson about people before I traveled all the way to Arizona." The bitterness in her voice made Samuel's chest ache. "The man who lied to you is a fool and a coward. You do not even know me. How can you be so sure?" Samuel considered the question carefully, wanting to get the words right. "Because you came all this way on faith. Because you are trying to build something from nothing instead of giving up. Because you looked me in the eye yesterday instead of looking away like most people do. That takes courage." Katherine was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, very softly, "Thank you, Samuel. That is one of the kindest things anyone has said to me in a very long time." Samuel did not know how to respond to that, so he focused on guiding Copper down the trail. But something warm had settled in his chest, something he had not felt in years. The Morrison Ranch sprawled across a wide valley, with a main house, several barns, and a bunkhouse for the ranch hands. Samuel had worked here twice before, once mending fences and once breaking 3 green horses for Mr. Morrison's sons. He knew the family well enough to approach directly. Mrs. Morrison, a stout woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner, came out to meet them when they rode up. Her gaze moved from Samuel to Katherine with obvious interest. "Samuel Morgan, been a while," she said. "Who is this you have brought with you?" "This is Katherine Reynolds," Samuel said, helping Katherine dismount before sliding down himself. "She is looking for work. She can cook, keep books, manage a household. I thought you might have need of someone." Mrs. Morrison circled Katherine slowly, assessing her the way she might assess a horse at auction. Katherine stood straight, meeting the older woman's gaze steadily. "Can you make biscuits?" Mrs. Morrison asked. "Yes, madam. Light and flaky." "Can you handle feeding 20 hungry men 3 times a day?" "I can." "Can you manage accounts and keep track of supplies without losing money or getting cheated by suppliers?" "I kept the books for my mother's boarding house for 5 years. I never lost a penny or paid more than fair price." Mrs. Morrison nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Can you start Monday?" Katherine's face lit up with genuine joy. "Yes, madam. Thank you, madam. Wages are $40 a month plus room and board, Sundays off. You will have a room in the main house separate from the hands." "Samuel, you vouch for this girl." "I do," Samuel said firmly, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "Then we have an agreement. Miss Reynolds, come by Saturday and I will show you around, introduce you to the cook you will be replacing. She is leaving to live with her daughter in Tucson, so the timing is perfect." As they rode back toward Coolidge, Katherine's arms around Samuel's waist felt different somehow, more familiar and comfortable. She was talking now, words spilling out in a rush of relief and excitement. "I cannot believe that worked. I was so nervous, but she seemed fair, and $40 a month is more than I hoped for. Samuel, I do not know how to thank you properly. You barely know me, yet you helped me find work and vouched for me to the Morrisons." "Why?" Samuel thought about the question, about all the years he had spent alone, talking only to Copper because people seemed too complicated, too likely to hurt or disappoint. But Katherine had asked him a direct question, and she deserved a direct answer. "Because I know what it is like to feel alone," he said. "To feel like the world has knocked you down and you have to claw your way back up with no help. Someone should have helped you sooner. I am glad I could be the one to do it." Katherine rested her forehead against his back for just a moment, a gesture of trust and gratitude that made Samuel's throat tight. "You are a good man, Samuel Morgan. Do not let anyone tell you different." Over the next 3 days before Katherine started at the Morrison Ranch, Samuel found himself spending more time at the boarding house than he had planned. He told himself it was because Mrs. Patterson had actual work for him, repairs that genuinely needed doing. But the truth was that he wanted to see Katherine, to hear her voice, to learn the way she laughed when something genuinely amused her. They fell into an easy pattern. Samuel would work on whatever Mrs. Patterson needed, fixing a broken window, replacing worn floorboards, patching the roof where winter rains had found weak spots. Katherine would bring him coffee or water, and they would talk. Actually talk, real conversations that Samuel had not had with anyone in years. "Tell me about Texas," Katherine said on Thursday afternoon, sitting on the porch steps while Samuel repaired the railing. "Is that where you are from originally?" "Born and raised on a ranch outside of San Antonio," Samuel said, measuring a piece of wood carefully. My father built that place from nothing, just him and my mother and eventually me and my brother. It was a good life, hard but honest. What happened? Samuel had not talked about this with anyone, not even Copper, but something about Katherine's gentle attention made the words come easier. My father died when I was 22. Heart gave out one day while he was working. My older brother Marcus inherited the ranch, which made sense since he was the oldest. But Marcus decided I was a threat somehow, like I wanted to take the place from him. Started treating me like hired help instead of family. After a year of that, I left. Have been drifting ever since. Do you miss it? The ranch, I mean. Every day, Samuel admitted. But I miss what it was, not what it became. Sometimes places change so much they are not home anymore. Katherine nodded slowly. I understand that. Philadelphia was my home for 24 years, but after my mother died last year and my stepfather made it clear I was not welcome in the boarding house anymore, it stopped feeling like home. That is why I answered that lying man's advertisement. I was looking for a new place to belong. Maybe you will find it here, Samuel said. Coolidge is not much, but the people are decent for the most part. Maybe, Katherine agreed. Or maybe home is not always a place. Maybe sometimes it is a person, or a feeling, or just knowing you are not alone anymore. Their eyes met, and Samuel felt something shift between them, something that made his carefully constructed walls start to crack. He looked away first, focusing on the railing with more attention than it required. Friday evening, Mrs. Patterson invited Samuel to stay for dinner, and he found himself sitting at the table with Katherine and two other boarders, an elderly traveling salesman and a young schoolteacher passing through on her way to a new position in Phoenix. The schoolteacher tried to engage Samuel in conversation several times, but he found himself watching Katherine instead, noticing the way she made sure everyone had enough food, the way she listened intently when the salesman told his rambling stories. After dinner, Samuel helped Katherine clear the dishes despite Mrs. Patterson's protests that he was a guest. In the kitchen, with their hands in soapy water and the evening light fading outside the window, Katherine spoke quietly. I am nervous about Monday. What if I am not as good at the work as I claimed? What if Mrs. Morrison regrets hiring me? You will be fine, Samuel said with a certainty he actually felt. You are capable and smart and willing to work hard. That is all anyone can ask. Will you visit? Katherine asked, not looking at him. While I am at the Morrison Ranch, or will you move on to another town like you usually do? Samuel had been asking himself the same question. His pattern for the past 4 years had been to work a few weeks in one place, save his wages, and move on before anyone got too attached or started asking too many questions about his past. But the thought of leaving Coolidge now, of not seeing Katherine again, made something in his chest constrict painfully. I have more work here, he said carefully. Mrs. Patterson has a list as long as my arm. And I promised to help old Mr. Chen at the general store build new shelves for his stockroom, so I will be around for a while. Katherine smiled then, a real smile that reached her eyes and transformed her whole face. Good. I would miss our conversations if you left. I do not have many friends here yet. Neither do I, Samuel admitted. Never really have anywhere, but I think I would like to try. Being your friend, I mean, if you want that. I do want that, Katherine said softly. Very much. Saturday, Samuel rode with Katherine out to the Morrison Ranch so she could see where she would be working and living. Mrs. Morrison showed Katherine the kitchen, a large, well-equipped space with a massive stove and plenty of counter space. The cook who was leaving, a woman named Betty who had worked there for 15 years, took Katherine through the daily routine, and shared her recipes and tips for feeding the ranch hands efficiently. Samuel waited outside, checking Copper's shoes and trying not to think too hard about the fact that Katherine would be living here now, several miles from Coolidge, harder to see regularly. Mrs. Morrison found him there, studying him with the same sharp assessment she had used on Katherine. "You sweet on that girl?" she asked bluntly. Samuel felt his face heat. "I barely know her." "That was not the question. I asked if you are sweet on her." He could have lied, but Mrs. Morrison had a way of seeing through nonsense. "I like her, more than I have liked anyone in a very long time." "Then you should tell her that before some other man does. Girl like Katherine, with her skills and her good sense, she will not stay unmarried long in these parts. Not enough women to go around as it is, and she is a catch by any standard." The thought of Katherine with someone else made Samuel's hands clench. But what did he have to offer her? He was a drifter with no land, no permanent home, no prospects beyond the next odd job. Katherine deserved stability, security, someone who could give her the life she had dreamed of when she answered that lying man's advertisement. "I do not think I am what she needs," Samuel said quietly. "Then you are a fool," Mrs. Morrison said flatly. "That girl looks at you like you hung the moon, and you look at her like she is water in the desert. Sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you need when you need it most. Be smart enough to recognize it." Samuel thought about Mrs. Morrison's words all weekend. On Sunday, he attended church for the first time in months, sitting in the back pew and watching Katherine sit with Mrs. Patterson near the front. She wore a simple dress and bonnet, and when she glanced back and saw him, her whole face brightened. Such a small thing, that smile, but it warmed places inside Samuel that had been cold for years. After the service, they walked together back to the boarding house, moving slowly to stretch out the time. Other townspeople nodded greetings, and Samuel realized with some surprise that he was talking to them, making small conversation about the weather and upcoming harvest. Katherine made it easier somehow, her presence smoothing his rough edges and filling awkward silences. "I leave for the Morrison Ranch tomorrow morning," Katherine said when they reached the boarding house. "Mrs. Morrison is sending someone with a wagon to collect me and my things." "I know." Samuel had been trying not to think about it. "Samuel, can I ask you something? And will you be honest with me, always?" Katherine took a breath, gathering courage. "These past few days, talking with you, spending time together, it has meant more to me than I think you realize. You helped me when I was completely alone, and you did it without expecting anything in return. You have been kind and patient, and you have listened to me like what I say actually matters. I have not had that in a very long time." Samuel's heart was pounding. "You do matter. Everything you say matters. Then tell me this. Is this just friendship to you? Because if it is, I need to know now so I can guard my heart accordingly. But if it is something more, if you feel even a fraction of what I am starting to feel, then I need to know that too." It was the most direct question anyone had ever asked Samuel, and it deserved complete honesty. He thought about his years of loneliness, his conversations with Copper because people seemed too hard, too complicated. But Katherine was not complicated. She was clear and honest and brave enough to ask for what she wanted. "I am not good at this," Samuel said slowly. "Talking to people, letting them close, trusting that they will not leave or hurt me. I have been alone so long that I forgot how to be anything else. But then you arrived, and suddenly I remembered. I remembered that talking to someone who actually listens is better than any solitude. I remembered that caring about someone else is worth the risk of getting hurt. I remembered how to want things again instead of just surviving day to day." Katherine's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "What do you want, Samuel?" "I want to see you again, as often as you will let me." I want to keep having these conversations that make me feel human again. I want to be the person you smile at like that, like I matter to you the way you matter to me." He took a breath, diving in completely. "I want a chance to court you properly if you will have me." Katherine closed the distance between them, taking his rough, work-worn hands in her smaller ones. "Yes. Yes to all of it. I know we have not known each other long, but I have learned to trust my instincts, Samuel. And every instinct I have says that you are exactly what I need, what I have been looking for without realizing it." Samuel wanted to kiss her right there on the boarding house porch, but they had an audience in the form of Mrs. Patterson watching through the window with obvious satisfaction. Instead, he squeezed Katherine's hands gently and said, "I will ride out to see you at the Morrison Ranch as often as I can, and we will figure this out together." "Together," Katherine agreed. "That sounds perfect." The next morning, Samuel rode alongside the wagon that carried Katherine to her new position, unwilling to let her make the journey alone even though the ranch hand driving the wagon probably thought he was being ridiculous. Katherine sat in the back among her few possessions, and she and Samuel talked the whole way, covering everything from their favorite childhood memories to their opinions on whether Arizona was really as dry as everyone claimed. At the Morrison Ranch, Samuel helped Katherine carry her belongings to her small but comfortable room off the main house kitchen. Mrs. Morrison appeared as they were finishing, giving Samuel a knowing look. "You planning to visit regular?" she asked. "If that is acceptable to you, madam," Samuel said. "It is, long as it does not interfere with Katherine's work. Girl has a job to do and I expect it done properly." "I would not dream of interfering," Samuel assured her. "Good. Then you are welcome here, Samuel Morgan. Might even have some work for you if you are interested. Always need reliable hands for various jobs around the place." It was an offer Samuel had not expected, but one he accepted gratefully. "Thank you, madam. I appreciate that." Over the following weeks, Samuel fell into a new routine. He took whatever work was available in Coolidge and the surrounding ranches, but he made sure to end up at the Morrison place at least 3 times a week. Sometimes he worked there, mending fences or helping with the horses. Other times, he simply visited Katherine during her breaks, sitting in the kitchen while she prepared meals or walking with her in the evenings when her work was done. They talked about everything. Katherine told him about growing up in Philadelphia, about the boarding house where her mother taught her to see people as individuals with stories, rather than just customers paying for rooms. She told him about her stepfather's coldness after her mother died, about feeling like an intruder in her own home. She told him about the letters from the man who had lied to her, about how she had wanted so desperately to believe in his promises of a new life that she had ignored the small inconsistencies that should have warned her away. Samuel told her about his brother's betrayal, about working beside Marcus every day and slowly realizing that his own sibling saw him as a threat rather than a partner. He told her about the guilt he carried for leaving, for walking away from the ranch his father had built. He told her about the loneliness that had become so familiar he had almost stopped noticing it, until she arrived and reminded him what connection felt like. "You still talk to Copper every day?" Katherine asked one evening as they sat on the porch of the main house, watching the sun set over the desert. "Not as much," Samuel admitted. "I have someone else to talk to now." "I am glad," Katherine said, leaning her head against his shoulder in a gesture that had become natural over the past month. "Though I hope you do not stop completely. Copper was your friend when you needed one." "He will always be important to me," Samuel assured her. "Just like this, like you, will always be important to me now." Katherine tilted her face up to his, and Samuel finally did what he had been wanting to do since that first day on Mrs. Patterson's porch. He kissed her, soft and careful, like she was something precious that might break. Katherine kissed him back with a sweetness that made his chest ache, her hand coming up to rest against his cheek. When they pulled apart, Samuel saw everything he felt reflected in her green eyes. "I am falling in love with you," he said, the words feeling right and true. "I know it is fast, and I know I do not have much to offer you yet, but I want you to know that." "Fast does not mean wrong," Katherine whispered. "I am falling in love with you too, Samuel. Have been since you awkwardly offered to help me find work and could barely meet my eyes because you were so nervous." Samuel laughed, surprised by the sound. He had not laughed much in the past few years, but Katherine made it easy. "I was terrified. You were so beautiful and I was so out of practice at being human." "You have never been anything less than human," Katherine said firmly. "Lonely, maybe. Hurt, certainly. But always human, always good." As autumn deepened into winter, Samuel and Katherine's relationship deepened too. Samuel found work helping several ranches prepare for the colder months, work that kept him in the Coolidge area. He started renting a small cabin on the edge of town, a place that felt more like home than anywhere he had lived in years, mostly because Katherine visited whenever she had a day off. They spent Sundays together, attending church and then having dinner with Mrs. Patterson, who took shameless credit for bringing them together. The town began to accept Samuel as more than just the quiet drifter who passed through occasionally. People greeted him by name, asked his opinion on various matters, included him in conversations and community events. "You are part of something now," Katherine told him one Sunday afternoon as they walked along the creek that ran east of Coolidge. "Do you see it? You belong here." Samuel did see it, and it filled him with a hope he had thought lost forever. But there was one more thing he needed to do, one piece of his past he needed to face before he could fully embrace this new future. "I need to go back to Texas," he told Katherine as they sat on the creek bank, her hand warm in his. "Just once, to see my brother, to talk to him about what happened. I need to know if there is any way to fix what broke between us, or at least to find some kind of peace with it." "Then you should go," Katherine said without hesitation, "and I will be here when you come back." "Come with me," Samuel said impulsively. "I do not want to face this alone, and I want my brother to meet you to see what I have found here. Will you come with me?" Katherine searched his face, understanding what he was really asking. This was not just about facing his past, it was about showing his family his future. "Yes," she said, "of course I will come with you." They left in early December, taking the stage to San Antonio, and then riding the final miles to the Morgan Ranch on horses Samuel bought with his saved wages. The land was as beautiful as Samuel remembered, rolling hills and wide open spaces under the big Texas sky. But his stomach churned with anxiety as they approached the familiar buildings. Marcus was in the barn when they arrived, and he looked up in shock when Samuel called his name. 4 years had added lines to his brother's face and gray to his hair, though he was only 31. They stared at each other for a long moment, and Samuel saw his own pain reflected in Marcus's eyes. "Samuel," Marcus said finally, "I did not think I would ever see you again." "I needed to come back," Samuel said, "to talk if you are willing." Marcus nodded slowly, his gaze moving to Katherine with curiosity. Samuel introduced her, watching his brother's expression carefully. To his surprise, Marcus's face softened when Katherine smiled and offered her hand. "It is good to meet you," Marcus said. "Come up to the house. We should talk properly." Over coffee in the kitchen where Samuel had eaten 1,000 meals growing up, the brothers finally had the conversation they should have had years ago. Marcus admitted that his behavior had been driven by fear and insecurity, by pressure from his wife's family to prove himself as the ranch owner, by his own inadequacy in the face of their father's legacy. He had seen Samuel's competence as a threat rather than the gift it was. "I was wrong," Marcus said, the words clearly difficult. "I drove you away because I was too proud and too scared to share the load. This place has been struggling without you, Samuel. I see that now. Everything Father taught us about running a ranch together, I ignored it because I thought I had to do it all myself to prove I deserved the inheritance." "I should have fought harder to stay," Samuel said. "Should have made you listen instead of just leaving." "No," Marcus said firmly. "You had every right to leave when I treated you like that. I am the one who owes you an apology. I am the one who broke our family." They talked for hours, clearing the air, finding forgiveness and cautiously rebuilding a connection that had seemed permanently severed. Marcus's wife joined them eventually, a sharp-eyed woman named Caroline who admitted she had been pushing Marcus to reach out to Samuel for the past year. "This ranch needs 2 Morgan brothers, not 1, Caroline said bluntly. "And my husband needs his brother back in his life, even if his pride made it hard to admit." As the sun set on their first day back in Texas, Marcus made Samuel an offer. "Come back. Work the ranch with me the way Father wanted. We will be equal partners. I will have the paperwork drawn up legally. Bring Katherine and build a life here." It was everything Samuel might have wanted 4 years ago. But as he looked around the familiar ranch, he realized it was not what he wanted now. His home was in Arizona, in Coolidge, in the community he had started building and the life he was creating with Katherine. "I appreciate the offer," Samuel said carefully. "More than you know. But I have a life in Arizona now, a good life that I built myself. I cannot come back, not to stay." Marcus looked disappointed but not surprised. "I understand, but promise me you will visit, that we will stay in contact this time. I do not want to lose you again." "I promise," Samuel said, and he meant it. They stayed in Texas for a week, reconnecting with Marcus and Caroline, visiting their parents' graves and showing Katherine the places that had shaped Samuel's childhood. But as they prepared to leave, Samuel felt no regret. Texas was his past, but Arizona was his future. On the stage back to Coolidge, Katherine rested her head on Samuel's shoulder and asked, "Are you sad? Leaving the ranch again?" "No," Samuel said honestly. "I am grateful I went, grateful we talked and found some healing, but I am ready to go home now." "Home to Coolidge," Katherine said with a smile. "Home to you," Samuel corrected. "Wherever you are, that is home for me now." They arrived back in Coolidge just before Christmas, and Samuel realized with surprise that people had been waiting for them. Mrs. Patterson had organized a welcome-back party at the boarding house, and half the town showed up. People asked about his trip, welcomed him back, treated him like he was truly one of them. Samuel found himself talking easily, laughing at jokes, sharing stories about Texas. Katherine stood beside him, her hand in his, and Samuel realized this was what belonging felt like. On Christmas Eve, Samuel took Katherine to the small cabin he had been renting. He had spent the past weeks before their trip to Texas fixing it up, making it more than just a place to sleep. He had built new furniture, repaired the chimney, replaced the worn curtains, and made it into something that could be a home. "It is not much," he said as Katherine looked around with wide eyes, "but it could be ours if you want it to be." "Katherine Reynolds, I love you more than I have ever loved anything or anyone. You taught me how to talk to people again, how to be part of a community, how to hope for a future instead of just surviving the present. Will you marry me?" Katherine's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling as she threw her arms around him. "Yes. Yes, of course I will marry you. I love you too, Samuel Morgan. I love your kindness and your honesty and the way you try so hard even when things are difficult. Yes to all of it, to this cabin, to building a life together, to everything." Samuel kissed her properly then, pouring all his love and hope and gratitude into it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and happy, Katherine laughed. "Mrs. Morrison is going to be unbearable when we tell her. She will claim she knew from the very beginning." "She did know from the very beginning," Samuel pointed out. "She told me I was sweet on you the first day you went to the ranch. And were you sweet on me even then?" Samuel thought back to that day, to Katherine's nervous hope and determination. "Yes, I think I was. I just did not have the words for it yet." They were married in the Coolidge Church on a bright January morning in 1884 with Mrs. Patterson standing up as Katherine's witness and Mr. Morrison, who had become a friend and mentor to Samuel, standing up as his. The small church was packed with people from the town and surrounding ranches, people who had become Samuel and Katherine's community. Even Copper was there, tied outside and occasionally whinnying his opinion through the window, which made everyone laugh. Katherine wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Patterson and several other women in town had helped her make, and she was the most beautiful thing Samuel had ever seen. When he said his vows, his voice was steady and clear, every word meant with his whole heart. When Katherine said hers, tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "I never thought I would find this," she whispered as they exchanged rings, simple gold bands Samuel had purchased with money saved from months of hard work. "I came to Arizona heartbroken and alone, and I found everything I was looking for." "So did I," Samuel whispered back. "I just did not know I was looking until you arrived." The kiss that sealed their marriage was tender and sweet, and when they turned to face their community as husband and wife, the cheers and applause filled Samuel with a joy so complete it almost hurt. The celebration that followed lasted well into the evening with food and music and dancing. Samuel danced with his wife, still getting used to calling her that, and he was surprised to find that he was good at it, that holding Katherine close and moving to the music felt natural and right. "You are full of surprises," Katherine told him, laughing as he spun her. "You can dance." "My mother insisted I learn," Samuel admitted. "Said no son of hers would be helpless at social gatherings. I have not done it in years, but I guess it comes back. I am glad it does. I want to dance with you like this for the rest of our lives." "That can be arranged," Samuel promised. They settled into married life in the small cabin, which Katherine transformed into a real home with curtains and rugs and small touches that made every room welcoming. Katherine continued working at the Morrison Ranch 3 days a week, and Samuel took work at various ranches and in town, building a reputation as someone reliable and skilled. They saved money carefully, planning for the future they were building together. Marcus wrote regularly from Texas, long letters updating Samuel on the ranch and asking advice on various matters. Samuel wrote back, and the brothers slowly rebuilt their relationship through those letters. Marcus and Caroline even visited once, making the long journey to Arizona to see where Samuel had made his new life. The visit was good, proof that healing was possible even when things seemed broken beyond repair. In the spring of 1884, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. She told Samuel on a warm April evening as they sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "We are going to have a baby," she said softly, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "In late autumn, the doctor thinks." Samuel felt like his heart might burst from happiness. "A baby, our baby. Katherine, are you happy about this?" "Happier than I can say," Katherine assured him. "Are you?" "Terrified and thrilled and grateful all at once," Samuel admitted. "I want to be a good father, the kind of father mine was. Patient and kind and present." "You will be," Katherine said with absolute certainty. "You are already patient and kind and present. This baby is lucky to have you." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Samuel fretted over Katherine constantly, worried about her working too hard or not eating enough or any of 100 other things that could go wrong. Katherine bore his concern with patient amusement, reminding him that women had been having babies since the beginning of time, and she was perfectly healthy. Mrs. Morrison eventually reduced Katherine's hours without reducing her pay, a kindness Katherine protested, but Samuel deeply appreciated. Katherine spent more time at home, preparing for the baby, and Samuel found himself rushing home from whatever job he was working, eager to spend every possible moment with his wife. They talked about names endlessly. Katherine liked traditional family names, while Samuel preferred something new and fresh. They finally settled on William if the baby was a boy and Charlotte if it was a girl, but they would use neither family name, giving their child a fresh start. In November, on a cool evening when the desert air finally held a hint of winter chill, Katherine's labor began. Mrs. Patterson came to help, as did the doctor from Coolidge and Mrs. Morrison, who had become something of a surrogate mother to Katherine. Samuel paced the length of the cabin for hours, listening to Katherine's labored breathing and occasional cries of pain, feeling helpless and terrified. "Talk to Copper," Mrs. Patterson suggested, finding Samuel white-faced and shaking outside the cabin door. "He always made you feel better before." Samuel went to the small barn where Copper was stabled, pressing his forehead against the horse's warm neck. "She has to be okay," he whispered. "I cannot lose her. I just found her. She has to be okay." Copper nickered softly, and Samuel let himself believe it was reassurance. Just before dawn, a baby's cry split the air, strong and healthy and beautiful. Samuel rushed back to the cabin to find Katherine exhausted but smiling, holding a small bundle wrapped in soft blankets. "Meet your son," she said softly. "William Samuel Morgan." Samuel took his son with shaking hands, staring down at the tiny red face and unfocused eyes. "He is perfect," he breathed. "Katherine, he is absolutely perfect." "He has your nose," Katherine said with a tired laugh. "Poor child." Samuel sat carefully on the edge of the bed, still holding William, and Katherine leaned against him. They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them together, a family. "Thank you," Samuel whispered, "for coming to Arizona, for giving me a chance, for creating this life with me. Thank you for everything." "Thank you for remembering how to talk to people," Katherine whispered back, "for letting me in when you had built walls to keep everyone out. Thank you for loving me." William grew quickly, a healthy, happy baby who seemed to inherit his mother's easy smile and his father's quiet observation of the world. Samuel discovered that fatherhood came more naturally than he had feared. He talked to William constantly, the way he used to talk to Copper, narrating everything he did and explaining the world in simple terms. "Your mother thinks I am being silly, talking to you like you understand," Samuel told William one afternoon while Katherine napped, and he did the washing up with the baby strapped to his chest in a sling Katherine had made. "But I figure it is good practice for when you are old enough to talk back. And maybe hearing words will help you learn faster." William gurgled and grabbed Samuel's finger with surprising strength. "That is right, you hold on tight," Samuel continued. "In this life, you have to hold on tight to the people and things that matter. Your mother taught me that." As William grew into a toddler, bright and curious and constantly getting into things, Samuel and Katherine's life found a comfortable rhythm. Samuel had enough regular work that they were saving money steadily, planning to buy land and build a larger house. Katherine had stopped working at the Morrison Ranch after William's birth, but she had started taking in mending and alterations from townspeople, work she could do from home while caring for their son. The Coolidge community embraced the Morgan family completely. William had a dozen unofficial aunts and uncles who spoiled him shamelessly. Mrs. Patterson babysat whenever Samuel and Katherine wanted an evening alone. The Morrisons gave William his first pony when he turned 3, a gentle old mare who tolerated the toddler's enthusiastic if clumsy affection. "This is what I always wanted," Katherine told Samuel on their 3rd wedding anniversary, sitting on their porch and watching William play in the yard. "Not the fancy house or elaborate promises that lying man offered me in his letters. Just this, a real home with someone who loves me, a child, a community that cares." "You have given me more than you know," Samuel said, pulling her close. "I was so lonely before you came, Katherine. I had forgotten what it felt like to connect with people, to be part of something larger than myself. You gave that back to me." In 1887, their daughter Charlotte was born, another smooth pregnancy and delivery that still left Samuel pacing and worried until he heard that first cry. Charlotte was tiny and perfect, with Katherine's green eyes and a stubborn streak that made both parents laugh. "She knows what she wants," Katherine said ruefully when Charlotte was 6 months old and screaming because Samuel had picked her up instead of her mother. "Just like someone else I know." "I have no idea what you mean," Samuel said innocently, though he knew perfectly well Katherine was talking about him. With 2 children, the cabin became increasingly cramped. Samuel finally made the decision he had been considering for months. Using their savings and a small loan from the bank, he purchased 20 acres on the edge of Coolidge, land with good water access and enough space for a house, a barn, and eventually some cattle or horses. Building the house became a community project. Friends and neighbors came on weekends to help, and Samuel repaid them by working on their own projects. The house rose slowly over the spring and summer of 1888, a solid 2-story structure with 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a porch that wrapped around 3 sides. They moved in just before Charlotte's first birthday, and Katherine cried happy tears as she walked through their new home, touching walls and windows and seeing all the potential. "It is really ours," she kept saying. "Our own house on our own land. Samuel, we built this." "We did," Samuel agreed, feeling a pride and satisfaction deeper than anything he had experienced. "We built a life, a family, a home, together." William started school that autumn, walking to the small schoolhouse in Coolidge with a group of other children. He was bright and eager to learn, bringing home questions that Samuel and Katherine worked together to answer. Charlotte, meanwhile, proved to be as fearless as her brother was thoughtful, constantly getting into mischief and needing to be rescued from various predicaments. "She climbed onto the roof this morning," Samuel told Katherine one evening, shaking his head in amazement. "Used the ladder I left leaning against the barn. She is not even 2 years old yet." "She gets that from you," Katherine said, trying not to laugh. "Your mother wrote me that you once climbed to the top of their barn when you were 3, and she nearly had a heart attack getting you down." Samuel had started writing to his mother after William was born, cautiously re-establishing a relationship. She had written back immediately, overjoyed to hear from him and eager to know her grandchildren. The letters back and forth had helped heal more of the wounds from the past. In 1889, Marcus and Caroline had their first child, a son they named after Samuel's father. The news came in a letter full of joy and exhaustion, and Samuel felt genuine happiness for his brother. They were both building the lives they wanted now, just in different places. "Should we visit?" Katherine asked, reading the letter over Samuel's shoulder. "Let the children meet their uncle and aunt and cousin." "I think we should," Samuel said. "Enough time has passed, enough healing has happened. And I want William and Charlotte to know that family can be complicated but still worth fighting for." They made the trip to Texas that summer, A long journey by stage with two young children that tested everyone's patience. But seeing Marcus hold William and Charlotte, seeing the wonder in his brother's eyes as he met his niece and nephew, made every difficult moment worth it. "You have done well, brother," Marcus said quietly one evening while the wives were putting the children to bed. "Katherine is wonderful, and your children are a credit to you both." "You will do well too," Samuel assured him. "Being a father changes everything, makes you want to be better than you thought you could be." "Like what happened between us?" Marcus asked. "It made you better," Samuel considered the question carefully. "It broke something in me, but maybe that needed to happen. Maybe I needed to be broken down so I could rebuild myself differently. I do not think I would have ended up in Arizona, would have met Katherine, would have built the life I have now if things had not happened the way they did. So yes, in a strange way, it made me better. Not because of the pain, but because of what I chose to do after the pain." The brothers talked late into the night, cementing the fragile peace they had rebuilt. When Samuel and his family left Texas a week later, it was with promises to visit again, to stay in contact, to let their children grow up knowing each other despite the distance. Back in Coolidge, life settled into new patterns. Samuel had established himself as one of the most skilled horse trainers in the region, and people brought him difficult animals from miles around. He had a gift for understanding what horses needed, for communicating with them in ways that seemed almost magical. "It is because you spent so many years talking to Copper," Katherine teased him. "You learned their language." "Maybe," Samuel admitted. "Or maybe I just remember what it is like to be difficult and misunderstood, to need someone patient enough to figure you out." Copper was 14 now, getting old for a horse, and Samuel knew their time together was limited. He had younger horses for the hard work, but he still rode Copper regularly, still talked to him sometimes when he needed to think through a problem. "You are the one who started all of this," Samuel told the horse one afternoon while grooming him. "If I had not been talking to you that day, if I had not been so clearly awkward and out of practice with people, maybe Katherine would not have found me interesting. Maybe she would have looked for help from someone else." Copper snorted and stamped, and Samuel chose to interpret that as the horse taking full credit for the happy life Samuel was living. William turned 7 in 1890, and he showed signs of inheriting his father's gift with horses. Charlotte, now 4, was more interested in following her mother around and learning to cook and sew, though she still had her moments of wild adventure seeking. In the spring of 1891, Katherine discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news came with mixed emotions. They were happy, certainly, but also aware of how much work 2 children already required and how much space 3 would need. "We will manage," Katherine said firmly when Samuel expressed his concerns. "We always do, and I like the chaos of children, the noise and mess and constant activity. It makes the house feel alive. As long as you are happy, I am happy," Samuel assured her. "I just want to make sure you are not working too hard." "I am tougher than I look," Katherine reminded him. "I survived leaving everything I knew, traveling alone to meet a man I had never seen, discovering he was a liar, and building a completely new life in a place I had never been. I think I can handle one more baby." Their second daughter, Rose, was born in November 1891, a tiny, serious-faced baby who rarely cried but watched everything with intense focus. William adored her immediately, while Charlotte was less impressed with a sibling who could not yet play. "She will grow," Samuel told Charlotte, who had complained that the baby was boring. "Give her time, and soon she will be following you around and copying everything you do just like you follow your mother." "That might be nice," Charlotte admitted grudgingly. "I suppose." Life with 3 children was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely wonderful. Samuel often thought about his younger self, the lonely man who talked only to his horse because people seemed too complicated. That man seemed like a stranger now, someone Samuel barely recognized. He had changed so much since Katherine arrived in Coolidge that spring day in 1883. He had learned to talk again, to connect, to be part of a community. He had learned to love and be loved, to build instead of drift, to put down roots instead of running when things got difficult. "Do you ever miss it?" Katherine asked him one quiet evening after the children were in bed. They sat on their porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The freedom of drifting, no responsibilities, just you and Copper and the open road. Samuel thought about it seriously, because Katherine deserved an honest answer. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it," he admitted, "but I do not miss the loneliness. I would not trade what we have for anything, Katherine. This life, this family, this home we built together, it is everything I did not know I wanted until you showed me it was possible." "I feel the same way," Katherine said softly. "I came to Arizona looking for a home and found so much more. I found a partner, a love that makes me better than I was, a family of my own. I found belonging." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, watching their children's future unfold in the stars above. As the years passed, the Morgan family became a fixture in Coolidge. Samuel served on the school board, using his experience and his growing confidence to help make decisions about the community's children. Katherine organized charitable efforts through the church, making sure no one in Coolidge went without food or clothing. Their children grew healthy and happy, surrounded by love and stability. William showed early promise as a horseman, spending hours with his father learning to train and care for the animals. Charlotte discovered a talent for drawing and painting, covering the house with pictures of their family and the Arizona landscape she loved. Rose, as she grew, proved to be the scholar of the family, reading everything she could get her hands on and asking questions that challenged even Samuel's knowledge. In 1895, Marcus and Caroline brought their 3 children to visit, a boisterous group that got along immediately with William, Charlotte, and Rose, despite the distance that usually separated them. The two families spent a wonderful month together, and Samuel felt the last shadows of old pain finally fade away completely. "I am proud of you," Marcus told Samuel on the last night of their visit. "Proud of the man you became, the family you built, the life you made for yourself." Father would be proud too. So would Mother, Samuel said, because she had visited twice now and told him the same thing. "We both did what we needed to do, Marcus. We both found our way." Copper died peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1896, at the respectable age of 21. Samuel buried him in a shaded spot near the barn, with William and Charlotte, and Rose all helping to dig the grave and say goodbye to the horse who had been there before any of them were born. "He was a good horse," William said solemnly, placing a bouquet of wildflowers on the fresh earth. "He was more than that," Samuel corrected gently. "He was my friend when I had no others. He listened when I needed to talk. He was patient with me when I was learning to trust again." In a lot of ways, Copper made this whole life possible, because he taught me how to be present with another being, even if that being was a horse. "I will miss him," Charlotte said, wiping away tears. "Me too," Samuel admitted. "But I am grateful for all the years we had together, and I am grateful that his last years were spent in a good place, surrounded by family, with plenty of food and care. That is all any of us can hope for, really." Katherine stood beside Samuel, her hand in his, understanding without words what this loss meant to him. That night, after the children were asleep, Samuel talked about Copper properly, sharing all the memories and the gratitude and the grief. "I used to tell him everything," Samuel said. "Before you came, he was the only one I trusted with my thoughts and feelings. And somehow, practicing on him, learning how to put my emotions into words even if I was just talking to a horse, that made it possible for me to talk to you when you arrived. Copper prepared me for you without either of us knowing it. Then I am grateful to him too," Katherine said, holding Samuel close, "for taking care of you until I could." Life continued, full and rich and satisfying. Samuel bought more land as their finances allowed, building up a small but prosperous horse ranch that supplied trained mounts to ranchers and travelers throughout the territory. Katherine's reputation as a seamstress grew, and she took on a young apprentice from town, teaching her skills while providing employment. William left for college in California in 1900, planning to study veterinary medicine so he could return and work with his father. Charlotte found a position teaching art at the Coolidge School, staying close to home and family. Rose, brilliant and ambitious, had her sights set on becoming a lawyer, though everyone told her it was an impossible dream for a woman. "Nothing about this family has been about doing what is supposed to be impossible," Samuel told Rose firmly when she expressed doubts. "Your mother traveled alone across the country and built a life from nothing. I learned how to connect with people again after years of isolation. We made a home and a family and a community. If you want to be a lawyer, you will find a way to make it happen, and we will support you every step of the way." Rose hugged him tight, and Samuel felt the same gratitude he had felt that first day Katherine smiled at him. Gratitude for second chances, for growth, for the possibility of becoming more than you thought you could be. In 1905, Katherine and Samuel celebrated their 21st wedding anniversary. Their children, now grown or nearly so, organized a party that filled their house with friends and neighbors and family. Marcus and Caroline came from Texas, bringing their children and grandchildren. Mrs. Patterson, now in her 80s and still sharp as a tack, held court from the most comfortable chair, telling everyone who would listen that she was responsible for the entire Morgan family existing. "She is not wrong," Katherine told Samuel as they danced together in their own living room, surrounded by everyone they loved. "If she had not brought us together that day, none of this would have happened." "True," Samuel agreed, "but we are the ones who chose to say yes. You said yes to letting me help you. I said yes to trying to connect with another person again. We kept saying yes to each other every day through all the challenges and changes. That is what built this life." "I would say yes again," Katherine said softly. "Every single time I would choose you." "And I would choose you," Samuel promised. "Forever and always I choose you." They kissed as their family and friends cheered, and Samuel thought about the lonely cowboy he used to be, talking only to his horse because people seemed too difficult, too likely to cause pain. That man seemed impossibly distant now, a ghost of a person he barely remembered. Katherine had arrived and he had remembered how to have conversations. More than that, he had remembered how to live, how to love, how to hope. She had given him back his voice, his confidence, his belief that connection was worth the risk. And he had given her a home, not just a house, but a real home built on trust and love and partnership. Together, they had created something neither could have managed alone, a family and a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. As the party continued around them, and their children laughed and their grandchildren played, Samuel held his wife close and felt complete. The lonely cowboy was gone, replaced by a man who belonged, who connected, who loved and was loved in return. And it had all started with a simple choice: to help a stranded woman find work, to risk conversation and connection one more time. That choice had changed everything. had given Samuel a life richer and fuller than anything he had imagined during those long, lonely years on the trail. And as he looked around at the community they had built, the family they had raised, and the love they shared, Samuel knew with absolute certainty that every word, every conversation, every risk of connection had been worth it. The lonely cowboy had found his home at last, and it was more beautiful than any dream could have promised.